time this new way of life. We can't do this alone. And today I choose not to. I love this family. You guys saved my life. My sobriety date is 8/22/11. I have a wonderful sponsor. I have a wonderful grand sponsor and a wonderful great grand sponsor. And what I love about my sponsorship tree, we all embrace the higher power. We all embrace service, meetings, the spiritual way of life, the giving, the love in my sponsorship tree. It changes my life every day. A little bit about my story. I'm not too much of a drunk-alcoholic person because I'm an alcoholic. There's a little bit of dry goods in my story, and I could tell you I'm a chronic alcoholic. Just like Dr. Silkworth said, once I take that first drink, that allergy and that mental obsession kicks in, the phenomenon of craving is beyond madness with me. I can't stop. One is too many, and a thousand is never enough, as they say, right? I was born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My mom was a school teacher. My dad worked at General Motors. I grew up in a homogeneous neighborhood. When the riots were going on in Detroit, there were white kids, Japanese kids, Italian kids. We were all sleeping over one another's houses, eating over one another's dining room tables. And grew up in church, Sunday school. Missing Sunday school wasn't an option. Little League baseball, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, everything in church, right? An only child. I was given all the rudiments that any child could need to succeed in this world. From teachers, coaches, I can chronicle everybody God put in my way to guide me to a better life. I had 6 scholarships to go to college, 3 academic and 3 athletic, and my buddy and I joined the Marine Corps on a dare. November 1970. Made all my rank meritorious. And at the age of 24, Nixon was in town. And we were on civil disturbance standby. So we were confined to base, and my company commander gave us a company party. Before this time, I had never touched a drink or a drug in my life. I was a jock in school, all the way from middle school to high school. Track, football, baseball. My buddies that I grew up with, we competed with who's going to make the honor roll, who's going to run the fastest time on the track and field, who's going to make the varsity football team, right? Who's going to get the prettiest girl in the school? Those healthy pursuits, right? And we swore to each other that we would never touch a drink or a drug or go to jail. And we were going to college. Well, I violated the first 3. I ended up going to college later, but I violated the first 3, right? At the age of 24, this company party, I had just made E5. Everybody's getting smashed. I had never touched a drink before. Everybody, and for some reason, I didn't feel satisfied with my accomplishments, fitting in with my peers. I still felt like the odd man out. And everybody was saying, man, come on, have a drink. Smoke a joint, right? And after enough cajoling, I finally caved in. Had my first joint, my first beer, my first cigarette all on the same day. And it was cool because I fit in with my peers, right? But in the back of my mind, although I gave you the impression that I was having a ball, that conscience seared me. I broke my resolve. I took a drink, smoked a joint, smoked a cigarette. Promise that I had made to my peers, my best friends, right? And there's another pivotal story in my life. I'm just going to backtrack. 1968, I was 15, 16 years old. December 20th, my grandmother, she wanted me to stay over that night, and I did. And she came into the guest room about 11 o'clock at night and told me how proud of me she was. That if I ever got married, to be the best husband I could be, and if I ever had children, try to be the best father I could be. Try to follow in the footsteps of my dad and my grandfather and my uncle. They were all good men, all military, good, hardworking men, law-abiding, good parents, civic-minded. I said, yeah, Nana, yeah, okay. And she said, I'm so tired. She went to the bathroom and she came back and laid in my arms and passed away in my arms. She took her last breath with me, right? Remember that story. 6 months into this partying, I didn't like it. My proficiency mark started going down. My attitude started changing. And my conscience was searing me. And the Navy had a program for guys returning from Nam with substance abuse problems. And I asked my CO if I could join just for a change of duty station, right? Well, when the board convened, my service record book was so meritorious, they thought I was using the program to malinger, just to get out of service. And nothing was done. And I got a resentment. And that resentment lasted me 40 years. Of course, I didn't know that till I came in the program, what it was. But after doing that fourth step and some praying, talking with the sponsor and doing a serious day step to look for that experience that caused that emotional violent twist in my personality, altering my personality for the worse, discoloring my personality and altering my life for the worse, it says in that step 8. That was one of the experiences that changed my life. Because I was taught that if you do the right thing, more often than not, the right thing's going to happen. Well, sometimes that's not always the case. But I grew up in a bubble, I would say, good home, but I didn't have any conflict resolution skills, and I got a resentment. And being the big, bad Marine track star, honor roll student, macho guy, I couldn't go to a man and say, you know what, I don't know how to handle it. It's bigger than me, will you help me? No, on the contrary, what I said was, okay, I'll show you, I'll hurt myself. And essentially, that's what I did. Got an honorable discharge. And God always provided me a job, always worked. My family gave me a wonderful work ethic. But in the daytime, I would be Square Joe. And at night, I'd put my bell bottoms on and tie-dye t-shirt on, and I'm going out with the hippies, rock bands, and, you name it, partying away. And it was fun, right? But in the back of my mind, my conscience was searing me, right? Eventually, I met my wife, an Irish Jamaican. She was flying with Pan Am when it went under. I met her at a Louis Bellson jazz concert at the University of Michigan. Her and Peggy Johnson married Lee Iacocca. Her and my wife were friends together. And we got married. And eventually there was a strong Irish contingent in South Florida, so we moved to Miami. I said, well, do me good, change of location, geographical change. I'm, slow down drinking and party. Little did I know South Beach was a recipe for disaster for an alcoholic addict like me, right? And we had a daughter, my only child. And my ex-wife, she was in the air most of the time, so I played Mr. Mom. And after my dad died, my mom would come down to Miami in the winter, help me with my daughter with that debutante stuff, the women's socialization that my daughter needed. She craved more than anything. And after a while, you know, I supported my wife's career, but it became a strain in the marriage because I wanted my wife home. And I wanted her there for my daughter. But fear kept me from upsetting the apple cart. I didn't want to bring it up. I couldn't be honest with my own wife about, honey, I'm unhappy. Let's talk about this thing. What was my default behavior? Taking a drink or a drug, right? Eventually, I remember we had a fight one time, just an argument, not a physical fight. I've never had a physical fight with any woman in my life. My mom and grandparents and aunts, they were two graces of women. I had a wonderful socialization of women. I think my sex conduct, there was nothing perverted about it. I always had an honor and respect for women. I remember my grandmother used to say, a man doesn't deserve a woman to be crazy about him if he's not crazy about the right woman, And my dad used to always tell me the biggest sexual organ you have is the brain. It's the central nervous system. If you can't control that, son, you're in trouble, he used to tell me, And I wanted to be married forever like my grandparents, like my dad, It seems like the wonderful thing to do, So I wanted to follow in their footsteps. But I was so unhappy because I didn't know how to address things. Somehow I had lost my way, I had accomplished, it's funny, before I took that drink, I had accomplished everything I set out to do, whatever it was. Honor roll. I was the only 4-year letterman on my varsity football team. Track, football, always did well. Always did well in grades, behaved well in the neighborhood. God had always given me a value system where, I loved people and they loved me, But I took that drink and my life was altered. I became afraid because I didn't know how to handle certain things. My bubble burst. And I started behaving totally antithetical to the way I was raised, And I can't blame it on anybody, although I did. If I tripped over a blade of grass, it was the grass fault. And it wasn't the fact that I wasn't watching where I was going. It was never my fault. I couldn't own up to anything, and I wasn't raised like that. That's what was so weird about it, right? So I got to a point in my life where my default solution to deal with life on life terms was drink. I'm a painter by trade, went to college, but I remember when I got out of the Corps, I lived in an apartment complex and they needed a maintenance man. I worked there just to supplement my BAQ from the military, and they needed a painter. And I got into it, and I loved it, I loved the hands-on thing. And my mentor was an 80-year-old German guy. And he always told me that pay attention to detail, work as hard as you can. Be the best professional painter you can. Have your own signature. And my signature was detail, attention to detail, And I loved it. So I came down to Miami and I started my own business. And I worked subcontractor for a couple of contractors. And in our industry, substance abuse is pretty high, And it was right up my alley. People that were sick just like me, And those were the people I hung around. I didn't want to hang around people like my parents or like my buddies because I didn't want them to see through me. You see, I wanted to hang around people just like me because I didn't have to be accountable. I didn't have to tell the truth. I didn't have to not let anybody know I was afraid. I can continue to put on those many faces that I had accumulated over the years, hiding from the world and life itself. I was a neurotic nincompoop by that time. You know, I had crossed the precipice of insanity, lying all the time. I couldn't even look my own mother in the eye when she asked me. She'd fly down and she'd ask me, "Son, are you okay?" And I'd turn my head and say, "Yeah, Mom, I'm cool." It's my mother, my own mother. I couldn't tell her that I was hurting inside, that something was wrong, right? Couldn't talk about my marriage, fear. Didn't want her to think that I wasn't being the man that she wanted me to be. You know, pride and ego. So eventually, moving forward, 2011, the night of August 22nd. No, let's go back. May of 2011, I found out my wife had an affair. Broke my heart while she was in Europe, right? What was my default behavior? Resentment, then the drink and the drug, right? I went on a binge that just would rival any science fiction movie, right? I couldn't look another man in the eye and say, "Man, I'm having problems at home. What should I do about it?" I couldn't call the pastor and say, "Man, I need your help." I couldn't call my mom and say, "Mom, I'm hurting. This is what's happened." I didn't want you to think that I wasn't capable, that I wasn't being a man, right? So I'm living this facade. I'm internalizing all this pain, and it's just building up. And my default solution was always to take a drink. So eventually, it came to the night of the end, August 22nd. The morning of August 22nd, I walk in the house, 4 o'clock in the morning, and my only child, my daughter, was sitting there. And she had this look on her face, like, "Where's my dad? Where's the hero that raised me?" The despair and the fear she had in her face, the worry that I had caused my own child, right? I went in my bedroom and I got on my knees and cried like a baby. My whole life flashed in front of me in that 5 minutes. The jig was up. I had been a fraud all my life. A fraud, right? And I prayed, I said, "God, I can't take it anymore." I went to work the next morning to show you how my higher power is. There was another painter talking about his brother going to AA. I'm not making this up. True story. And I'm hearing this. I don't want him to think I'm sick like his brother. So I saddled just close enough to see and listen to what he was talking about. I went home that evening, looked in the phone book, and I went to my first meeting. And you guys probably heard me talk about this big white guy, most intimidating guy I ever saw in my life. Blue jean jacket, chains hanging from him, looked like he came from a Robert Redford movie. And he met me at the door, and he looked at me, and he saw the brokenness in my face. He didn't care about what color I was. He didn't ask me what kind of car I drove up in, what side of town I came from, how many college degrees I had. just put his arms around me and said, welcome, man. Love met me at the door, right? He didn't care. He just saw the brokenness in my face, right? He welcomed me in there, and I sat down. And for the first time in my life, I knew I was with some people who understood what I was dealing with. For the first time in my life. I listened to you guys, and you were disseminating some incredible wisdom and understanding that I just couldn't believe you guys were sick like me. I never would have believed it. Never in a million years. But after coming, I went home the next morning after that meeting, and the most amazing thing happened. The physical pangs was there. I wanted a drink was so bad, but I didn't have to drink. For the first time in 40 years, somewhere inside of me, I found the power to not pick up. That same guy became my sponsor. And he asked me, he says, man, are you ready to get busy? Do you want a new life? He told me a story. He says, do you believe in God? I said, yeah. He said, come on. We went in this private room, we got on our knees, and we said that third step prayer. And he worked harder than me in taking me through the steps. I was through the steps, I think it was 12 weeks. 12 weeks I was through the steps. Because the book says, after that third step prayer, it says we launch out on a course of action. Right? You hear people say that this disease is, I'm just a drink away. But no, I beg to differ. I understood the truth in that second part of that first step, that unmanageability. He explained to me that it wasn't talking about just forgetting to take out the garbage, or forgetting to gas up the car, or being late for work. That's part of it. But more importantly, he was talking about the collateral damage I left in my wake as a result of my thinking and using. The loved ones I hurt, the clients I disappointed, the people I lied to, the neighbors I closed the blinds on, the daughter I couldn't be honest with, the mother I couldn't look in the face and say, Mom, I'm hurting. The lies, the dishonesty. See, we automatically assume that honesty is simply about telling a lie. But equally important is living dishonestly. And I had accumulated so many faces for so many situations and conditions, whatever was expedient to get by, to get what I wanted. Self, right? And we got busy in that fourth step. And I got down to the cause and conditions of the nature of the person I had become. And I didn't like who I saw in that spiritual mirror. Because I had got to the point before I came in the rooms that I couldn't look myself in the mirror when I brushed my teeth. Literally. I would drop my head and brush my teeth. That's how overwhelming the shame was. God had given me a beautiful home, beautiful wife, beautiful child, beautiful mom, beautiful neighbors. but no family. Beautiful house, but no home. The X factor that was missing was me. The jig was up. I couldn't blame anybody anymore. I had to get honest about that. And if I wanted what you guys had, I had to do what you did. Half measures availed us nothing, and I was tired of being a fraud. And by God's grace, He put a wonderful sponsor in my way. By God's grace, from this moment till the moment I walked in these rooms, He's always put alcoholics in my way that have inspired me. The wisdom in this room is beyond, it's otherworldly. Otherworldly. I've never gone to a meeting and come out the same way. Never in my life. Never. I made that decision in 3, and I always say this in my meetings. It tells us in that third step in the 12 and 12 that the effectiveness of the entire program rests on how well and how earnestly we make that decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood it. It says the whole program rests on that decision. God let me see that. I was tired of being a fraud. Right? And I would pray and ask God to give me the same zeal that I had when I was running track. Give me the same zeal that I had when I was out there chasing that mess. Restore that same vitality in my heart that I could chase this new way of life for Him. And He did by His grace. Right? And when I got to 6 and 7, I consummated that decision in 3. I told God He can have all of me because I didn't like the man I saw in 4 and 5. The jig was up. I was tired of being a fraud. I had enough examples, men and women in this program who inspire me every day to grow, to get honest, to be the best that I can. You see, by God's grace, if I can grow in my relationship with God and my usefulness to you guys today, I can lay my head down at night and rest in peace. Because I'll tell you what this program did for me. In January of 19, my mother had me sober, a sober son for 8 years. She died in my arms. I was there for her. A month later, no, in December of 18, I had a heart attack. While I was taking care of my mother. And in February of 19, I was there for my mother and she passed away in my arms. Right? This program gave my mother her son back. Right? It also gave me the resolve to walk through that process without thinking about a drink or a drug. Right? 2 months after that, I was diagnosed with a back injury and I had to have a laminectomy where they scraped between 4, 5, and 6, and I couldn't walk for 3 months. I had to train myself to walk again. Shortly thereafter, I get a call, May 6th, 2019, that my only child, my daughter, had just got back from Germany. She was killed by a drunk driver on the way to work that morning. Right? My whole world dropped out from under me. But I've learned in this program, if I pick up these spiritual kit of tools, one of which is going to my higher power first in everything, good and bad. Then I call my sponsor or another alcoholic. Hey man, this is what's going on. Right? Got on the plane and I flew down here. My sponsor and his wife were on vacation, that same white guy. 3,500 miles away, and they stopped what they were doing and flew to Florida to be with me. Love it at work, man. Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't have to go through that alone. You hear me? So after the funeral, I'm down here in the hotel by myself, and my buddies from the job, they're calling me. Man, I know you want to kill this guy. I know you want to kill this guy. They're not in the room, right? And I'm getting a resentment listening to this crap. And I prayed. I get on my knees. God, take this from me, man. You know. And I call my sponsor to show you how God is. First thing he said, man, how many times have you drove drunk and high in 40 years? And I hung up the phone. Of course, I didn't like the way he did that. But I had to process it. And he was right. Only by God's grace, I didn't kill somebody. And I went and prayed about it. And the next morning, what God put on my heart was this kid who was just like me. He was sick. He didn't wake up and just say, well, I'm going to go kill Earnest's daughter. I'm not all that. I'm not all that. So I called the police station. Got to get this resentment off of me. I called the police station. I told him to have his parents call me. And they did. And I asked them to tell their son that I forgive him. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to give those folks some freedom. I wouldn't want to have to bear his cross the rest of his life. He's going to have to bear that cross the rest of his life. I wanted to give them some freedom. A kid sick just like me. Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what it did? It lifted my resentment. I found peace that day. Do I mourn for missing my daughter? Yeah. Do I mourn for missing my mom? Yeah. But I don't have to live there. I don't have to live there. You see what this program, it never guarantees that we weren't going to experience any storms. But what it does guarantee, if we do this deal, if we learn how to walk through them with dignity and grace, without a drink or a drop, and without hurting people. And we learn that sometimes the lesson is not always for us. How we walk through that process can be a lesson for someone else. Right? Shortly thereafter, a month and a half later, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. The big C word. I'll never forget it. 11:15 in the morning. Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what I did? My remedy today, 12 o'clock, I was in a noon meeting. Yeah. Was I afraid when they told me? Darn tootin' I was. But I don't have to live there. And to show you how God is, another alcoholic showed up. And you know who he was? A physician. And he tells me, he says, man, I just went through that last year. He was able to disseminate the entire process, what I'm getting ready to face, the percentages of recovery, the whole 9 yards. The uncertainty was erased. Therefore, so was the fear. And I didn't have to drink. You see, when we turn to that higher power, even if it's just the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, this power does for us what we can't do for ourselves. If we're paying attention, it's there all along. It's there all the time. Because if you're here in this room, I believe, from my experience, strength, and hope, it's a calling. I leave my balcony here on the beach, and I get in my car, and I drive downtown, and I see alcoholics and addicts under a bridge, and I think to myself, I did the same thing they did. Why am I not there? It's a calling, you guys. Why am I not there? By God's grace, only by his grace do I get to sit here sober and carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because that's what it's about. It's not about Earnest. It's about God and the message of recovery. What this program has done for me, what it does for me on a daily basis. The most important thing it's done for me next to my recovery, it's shown me how to love another human being. The greatest gift God can give me in and through you guys. That's what service and sponsorship and meetings and fellowship does. It teaches us how to have wholesome, healthy relationships again. Because the book tells us that ineffective relationships were primarily responsible for all my problems, including alcohol. I didn't drink because I kicked a rock down the street. I drank because I lied to you, because I didn't know how to coexist with you effectively. I didn't know how to be honest. I was a fraud. I was a fraud. And I drank over it. And I was a liar. And I'll tell you how that lie is so devastating. This is why I know my higher power didn't create us to be liars. It registers on a machine. When I think I'm getting away with it, it's affecting my entire physiology to the point it registers on a machine, eating me up inside. And unless I'm some unconscionable moron, it's going to bother me. What's my default behavior? If I don't have a program, a drink or a drug, I was tired of being a fraud. I was tired of being a fraud. And I'll close with this. I like this. Step one. Page, I think it's page 27 in the 12 and 12. for the newcomer or anybody struggling with this thing, right? It says, who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Who cares anything about a higher power, let alone meditation and prayer? All that was French to me. Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carry AA's message to the next sufferer? No. The average alcoholic, self-centered in the extreme, doesn't care for this prospect unless he has to do these things in order to stay alive himself. Right? And this is the hit. Under the last of alcoholism, we are driven to A, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. The fatal nature, right? My thinking almost got my ass killed. You hear me? Right? Then and only then do we become as open-minded to conviction and as willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession. I didn't get here by virtue. I believe my higher power got here through the pain, brought me here through the pain and humiliation. I was ready to listen to anything you guys had to say. So if you're new in this program, trust me, please. I beg you tonight, man. Look at the gift in front of you. Look at the gift in front of you. If you just try this way of life. If you're a woman, reach out to these incredible women here on this program, armed with the facts about themselves in this program. If you're men, humble yourself, dude, and reach out to these incredible men on this platform here tonight. And just simply say, help me. Just try it out. If you don't like what you find, we can always refund your misery, as they always say. Trust me. Just give it a shot, man. I love you guys. My name is Ernie. I'm an alcoholic, man.
Thank you so much, Ernie. That was absolutely amazing. Not a dry eye in the house. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us tonight. Normally at this time of the night, I would do a reading from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but tonight I'm going to change it up. Earnest's story was absolutely incredible, and I'm going to pick 3 topics as a result, and the topics are going to be God, resentment, and prayer. So you can share on God, resentment, or prayer, or anything else related to alcoholism. And to start us off tonight, Bob Davis, please and thank you.
I was not expecting that. Thanks, Kim. My name's Bob Davis. I'm an alcoholic. And Ernest, my God, thank you so much. Yeah, I find it funny that I live about 45 miles from you. And we don't know each other now. I got a lot of friends in Miami, Russell, and all those guys. And I love them. And yeah, I just love so much what you said, God and prayer. I'm going to try to stick there. And, most of us, at least that I've met in 38 years of being here, come here without a God. Because we're a God. Charlie Parnley used to say agnostic is not a person who questions the existence of God. They believe there is a God, but they act there and live their life as if they are God. And that was me. I lived my life as if I was God. And, the master of my destiny. The creator of all things in my life. And, I come here so incredibly beaten and broken that I'm willing to listen and watch what goes on in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so many of those people that you described, I've met the same people. They had different names, But they did the same things. We say God has skin, and he does. Because he's never talked to me directly that I know of. But he's talked to me thousands and thousands of times through the words of other people and through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, through the steps that we work in this program. The idea that I would make a decision to do this work, and in doing that work, I would systematically remove the things in me that forced me or made it impossible for me to let God out. See, God's not out there. He's in here. The book tells me that he's deep down inside, that in the last analysis, that's where the